Ladies and gentlemen, today I want to explore a phenomenon that often goes unnoticed or misunderstood in the realm of human relationships, particularly between men and women. The title, "A Woman Will Do This When You Stop Talking to Her," might sound straightforward, but it touches upon the deeper truths of human nature, communication, and personal responsibility. Understanding human nature reveals that we are fundamentally driven by complex biological and psychological mechanisms that shape every interaction, every reaction, every decision we make. Human beings are not isolated islands. We are inherently social creatures, wired for connection, craving belonging, and seeking validation through meaningful relationships. When these connections are threatened, disrupted, or severed, our innate responses emerge with startling clarity, exposing the raw depth of our emotional landscape. To comprehend what happens when a woman reacts to your silence or withdrawal, you must first grasp that beneath every emotional response lies an evolutionary survival instinct designed to protect, to nurture, and to maintain social bonds that are vital for our well-being. Our emotional responses are not arbitrary. They are deeply rooted in the primal need for attachment, security, and affirmation. When communication stops abruptly, the mind perceives it as a threat to safety, triggering a cascade of reactions that are often subconscious but profoundly impactful. This perceived threat triggers a series of biological responses designed to alert us to danger, even if that danger is simply the absence of contact. The brain's amygdala, the seat of our emotional life, perceives silence or withdrawal as a signal of rejection or abandonment, activating stress responses that flood the body with chemicals like adrenaline and cortisol. These chemicals prepare us for fight or flight, but in the context of emotional relationships, they often manifest as anxiety, confusion, and frustration. The human psyche interprets silence as a sign of disapproval, disinterest, or betrayal, igniting insecurities that lie dormant but are awakened in moments of disconnection. These feelings are not signs of weakness, they are evidence of our biological wiring, reminding us that our deepest instinct is to seek connection and avoid separation. Furthermore, the human emotional response to silence is a reflection of our innate need for clarity and certainty. When words cease and ambiguity takes their place, the mind begins to fill in the gaps with assumptions, fears, and worst-case scenarios. The uncertainty creates a psychological storm, compelling us to seek answers, to understand what went wrong, and to restore the broken connection. This drive for understanding is rooted in our desire for control over our environment and relationships. Without clarity, chaos ensues, and the human spirit struggles to find peace. The absence of communication feels like a breach of trust, igniting feelings of rejection that cut deep into our sense of self-worth. We internalize this silence, asking ourselves whether we were enough, whether we failed, or whether we are fundamentally unworthy of love and attention. It's important to recognize that these emotional responses are not merely reactions to external stimuli, but are also shaped by our individual history and personal narratives. Past experiences, childhood wounds, and previous relationships influence how we interpret silence and withdrawal. If someone has faced abandonment or neglect before, the response to a partner's silence becomes magnified, triggering memories that intensify feelings of vulnerability and fear. Conversely, those with a secure attachment style may interpret silence differently, viewing it as temporary and manageable rather than catastrophic. Our emotional reactions are thus a mirror reflecting our internal world, shaped by our history, our beliefs, and our core sense of self. When we understand that these responses are universal, rooted in biology and psychology, we begin to see them not as flaws or weaknesses, but as natural expressions of our human condition. The biological responses to emotional threats are designed to serve a purpose, mobilize us to seek safety, affirmation, or resolution. The emotional pain that arises when a woman withdraws or stops communicating is a signal that something vital has been compromised. It pushes us to confront our vulnerabilities, to question our worth, and to evaluate the strength of the bond we have formed. The intensity of these feelings underscores how deeply we value connection and how devastating it feels when that connection seems to slip away. The human emotional response is not a sign of irrationality, but a testament to our capacity for love, attachment, and the desire to belong. It reveals that beneath our rational veneer lies a primal force that drives us to seek closeness and to avoid separation at all costs. In this context, silence becomes more than just an absence of words. It transforms into a powerful symbol of disconnection, a silent scream that echoes through the corridors of our subconscious. It activates our deepest fears of rejection and abandonment, stirring emotions that can either motivate us to bridge the gap or cause us to retreat further into ourselves. The human response to this silence is a complex interplay of biological impulses and psychological interpretations, each influencing the other in a dance of vulnerability and defense. Recognizing this interplay allows us to see that emotional reactions are not mere overreactions, but legitimate responses rooted in our evolutionary design. They serve as internal alarms that signal to us that our fundamental need for connection is under threat, urging us to respond with either effort or withdrawal. Furthermore, these responses are often amplified by societal and cultural narratives that reinforce certain emotional patterns. In many cultures, emotional restraint and stoicism are valorized, which can suppress healthy expression of these natural reactions, leading to misunderstandings and emotional suppression. Conversely, in other environments, overt emotional expression may be encouraged, which can sometimes escalate conflicts or misunderstandings. The key is to understand that regardless of cultural context, the underlying biological and psychological responses remain consistent. They are universal threads woven into the fabric of human nature. When a woman pulls away, it triggers a cascade of these responses, each rooted in the fundamental need for safety, belonging, and love. In essence, human nature compels us to seek connection because our survival has always depended on social bonds. Our emotional responses are not signs of weakness, but indicators of the profound importance we place on relationships. They are a testament to the fact that love and attachment are core to our existence. And when these bonds are threatened by silence or withdrawal, our entire being reacts instinctively to protect what we value most. Recognizing the power and depth of these responses allows us to approach the situation with compassion, understanding that beneath every emotional reaction lies a complex web of biological, psychological, and evolutionary forces designed to ensure our survival through connection. It is through this awareness that we can begin to navigate the turbulent waters of human relationships with wisdom, patience, and resilience, appreciating that our responses, no matter how intense, are simply echoes of our most fundamental human needs, often neglected, misunderstood, or taken for granted, leading to misunderstandings that can fracture even the strongest bonds. When we choose silence over words or avoidance over confrontation, we abandon the very tool that allows us to bridge gaps, clarify intentions, and foster trust. Without open dialogue, assumptions flourish, fears intensify, and emotional walls rise, making genuine connection impossible. The simple act of speaking truthfully requires courage because it exposes vulnerability and demands authenticity, qualities that many find uncomfortable yet are essential for building trust. When honesty is compromised, relationships become fragile. They teeter on false pretenses and superficial interactions, unable to withstand the inevitable storms of life. To ignore the importance of truthful communication is to deny ourselves the opportunity to understand each other's deepest needs, fears, and desires, and to cultivate empathy that transforms superficial interactions into profound connections. Respect for boundaries is the silent pillar that sustains healthy relationships. It is the recognition that every individual possesses their own inner world, their own limits, and their own right to autonomy. When we fail to honor these boundaries, we risk causing harm that can be difficult to repair. Respecting boundaries is not about control or manipulation. It is about honoring the other person's sense of self, their emotional safety, and their personal space. It is an active choice to listen and observe, to recognize when someone needs distance, and to respond with compassion rather than coercion. Crossing boundaries without consent is a betrayal of trust and can lead to resentment, withdrawal, or a complete breakdown of connection. True respect manifests in small daily actions, listening attentively, asking for permission, acknowledging feelings, and refraining from intrusive behaviors. It is about understanding that relationships flourish when both parties feel safe, valued, and understood, not when one person imposes their will or disregards the other's feelings. Honest communication is undercut when we do not confront uncomfortable truths, when we sugarcoat our feelings, or when we avoid difficult conversations that could lead to growth. The truth, no matter how painful, provides clarity and opens the door to resolution. It creates a space where both individuals can express their authentic selves without fear of judgment or rejection, fostering an environment of mutual respect and understanding. Silence, in contrast, often amplifies insecurities and false narratives, allowing doubts and misconceptions to take root. When we choose honesty, we take responsibility for our words and acknowledge that vulnerability is a strength, not a weakness. It requires a conscious effort to speak with clarity, kindness, and integrity, knowing that honesty is the bridge that connects two imperfect human beings striving for connection amid their flaws and fears. Respecting boundaries, on the other hand, means recognizing that love is not about possession or control, but about freedom and mutual growth. It involves understanding that each person has their own emotional rhythm, their own needs for solitude or closeness, and their own way of processing pain or joy. When we respect these boundaries, we send a powerful message. You are valued for who you are, not for who I want you to be. It entails patience and humility, acknowledging that healing and understanding take time. It also means listening more than we speak, observing more than we assume, and responding with empathy rather than reaction. Respectful boundaries prevent resentment from building, they nurture trust, and they foster an environment where honesty can thrive without fear of exploitation or abandonment. The failure to communicate honestly and to respect boundaries is often rooted in our own fears, fear of rejection, fear of vulnerability, or fear of losing control. We hide behind walls of silence, believing that avoiding difficult truths will protect us, but in reality, it only isolates us further. It is a paradox. By refusing to confront the truth or honor boundaries, we push love and connection further away. Authentic relationships demand that we confront our fears, speak our truths, and honor the boundaries that others set. This is not always easy. It requires courage to face discomfort, humility to admit mistakes, and compassion to forgive ourselves and others when boundaries are unintentionally crossed. Honest communication also entails active listening, truly hearing what the other person is saying without preparing a rebuttal or dismissing their feelings. Listening with intent and openness creates a safe space where vulnerability can flourish, where both parties feel heard and understood. When you listen deeply, you acknowledge the other's experience is valid, even if it differs from your own. This act of respectful listening is a powerful affirmation of their worth and a testament to your commitment to genuine connection. It breaks down barriers of misunderstanding and allows love to deepen, because it is rooted in truth and respect rather than concealment or manipulation. Respecting boundaries involves recognizing that sometimes silence is a form of self-care, and that forcing someone to communicate before they are ready damages trust. It is about understanding that patience and space are often the greatest acts of love you can offer. When someone sets a boundary, it is an invitation to honor their needs, not an obstacle to be overcome. Respecting these boundaries demonstrates that you value their autonomy and are willing to accept their limits, even if it challenges your own desires. It fosters a relationship built on mutual respect rather than dependency or control, encouraging both individuals to grow into the best versions of themselves. Honest communication also means being willing to admit when you are wrong, to own your part in misunderstandings, and to seek reconciliation with humility. It demonstrates that love is not about winning or being right, but about understanding and healing. Respecting boundaries means accepting that sometimes the most loving act is to give space, to listen without judgment, and to acknowledge that growth often occurs in the quiet moments of reflection. It is about understanding that true intimacy requires transparency and mutual respect, without which love becomes superficial, fragile, and ultimately unsustainable. In essence, the power of honest communication combined with a deep respect for boundaries creates a foundation where trust and love can thrive. When we speak truthfully and honor the limits others set, we send a message that we see them as whole and worthy, not as objects to be manipulated or possessions to be claimed. We demonstrate that love is rooted in integrity, patience, and understanding. We build relationships that can withstand the inevitable storms of life because they are anchored in authenticity and respect. This is the path to genuine connection, the pathway through which vulnerability becomes strength and love transforms into a sanctuary rather than a battleground. It is through this deliberate, courageous act of honest dialogue and boundary respect that we forge relationships capable of enduring the tests of time and the trials of human existence.